accepted, I propose to move immediately upon your works, your fortifications. So we need military victory. What I'm reminded of is the thing with the Tamil Tigers, right? When the Tamil Tigers were rather terroristic, when they were reeling, they were about to be destroyed. This was in, I think, 2009 in the springtime. It became clear that the Western powers had been supporting the Tamil Tigers all along, practically in an anti-Chinese function. As soon as it was clear that the Tamil Tigers were going to be wiped out, the British Foreign Secretary Miliband and the French Foreign Secretary, the French Foreign Minister Kouchner, they ran in. They said, "Oh, we've got to have a ceasefire." The ceasefire was to protect those butchers. So yes to the world bloc. Hollande is asking for it. That's good. Russian diplomacy has been seeking that bloc for the past year or more. That's the whole purpose of Russian diplomacy, is to assemble a worldwide bloc that could essentially reinvigorate the UN Security Council and allow a solution. But the key thing has to be work with existing governments, unless they're ISIS, of course, which is no government. But work with Assad, work with the Syrian government. We have always been on this line for the past 4 or 5 years, and that remains the key. Now, let's look at the domestic ramifications here in the U.S. This is, I think, an absolutely appalling spectacle. This is the week when the Republican Party essentially went fascist and embraced bigotry and essentially Nazi race science, I would say. They have now gone way too far. And I welcome it because I think this can now be the prelude to the collapse of the Republican Party. Now, there are two issues for the Republicans. One is, what do you want to do about Syria? And the other question is, can we have some number, right, be it 65,000 or 100,000 Syrian refugees that can be settled here in the United States? And I say yes, so you certainly can. And that does not constitute a risk. And indeed, not doing it would be a risk. In other words, if the United States gets up there and says, officially, in the eyes of the world, we are an Islamophobic power, this is grave damage to American national security and the whole standing of the United States in the world. It is intolerable, and it must not happen. And we'll be back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Hurrying along here on November 20th, let's look at the fascistization of the Republican Party. This is going to go down in history as the week that a qualitative shift in the direction of outright fascism, with already significant points of actual Nazism, have occurred in the Republican Party. And some of it has got to do with the no-fly zone, and some of it has got to do with the question of the Syrian refugees, right? Who are, and this is not a large amount, right? Not compared to the hundreds of thousands that have streamed into Germany. Plus, the United States is the classical immigration country, right? Wir sind das klassische Einwanderungsland, the classical country that you immigrate to. And New York City, in particular, from whence I hail, is the biggest factory of assimilation in the world. And if we just had a decent economy with a decent labor market, we could easily assimilate lots and lots of people. So instead of that, we have Ben Carson talking about if there's a rabid dog running around in your neighborhood, a mad dog, I would say the mad dog is old Ben, unstable as he is, you're probably not going to assume something good about that dog, and you put your children away. This is the level of the argument. You can rack that up against Dr. Goebbels any day. Who else do we have here? Donald Trump, of course. He's always out in front. He wants to close the mosques. He wants to register Muslim citizens. This is flagrant violation of the U.S. Constitution. Flagrant. Register, force people to register? My God, this is like the Nuremberg laws in Germany in the 1930s, right? Under Hitler. Let's get it straight. He also wants to other punitive measures, right? No doubt about Trump. So close the mosques and register the people, persecute them, take away their money so they can't send it to their relatives, on and on. In the case of, we've got some governors that have been in action. Greg Abbott of Texas is trying to outdo Governor Snyder of Michigan in the xenophobic, bigoted, and hate-filled measures. They want to cut off payments that are ultimately federal payments, but that go through state bureaucracies, right? They want to harass the huddling masses yearning to be free. So you've got an orgy of racist rhetoric from the Republicans about these groups, and they have no proof. In other words, there's no track record of terrorist activities or significant criminal activities coming from Syrians that have already been let in. Ironically, Syria is the most tolerant country. Remember, they have Shiites, they have Alawites, they have Sunnis, they have Kurds, they have Druzes, they have all different kinds. And the entire purpose of the Syrian state is to harmonize them, right? As this was told to me in particular by the Grand Mufti of Damascus, with whom I met when I was there. This is Dr. Husseini, and he said, you have to understand, we are the last bastion of tolerance, inclusion, and diversity in the entire Middle East. And those guys out there, those fanatics, be they Nusra or ISIS, simply kill Christians, kill Alawites, kill Druzes, whatever you want. They'll just mow you down, Yazidis, and so forth. So it's a genocidal cult. Trump says we're going to have to do certain things that were frankly unthinkable a year ago. This is how fascism creeps in, says Trump. We're going to have to look at the mosques. We're going to have to look very, very carefully. He would create a database of Muslims in the United States, certainly. There should be a lot of systems beyond databases. I mean, we should have a lot of systems. Well, this is simply appalling. Now, who else do we have? Little Rand Paul, in his doomed and moribund campaign, has again alienated the libertarians on this point. He is trying to tail after Trump and Carson, and he wants to seize on the Syrian refugee issue, and he's more focused on the refugees than on the problem in the Middle East. Paul offered an amendment blocking housing benefits for refugees from 34 countries, including Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, and Iran. And it didn't come up for a vote. Now, let me hasten to point out, the House of Representatives, with far too many Democratic votes, far too many Democrats voted for this. The House of Representatives has now passed a rather nasty piece of rhetoric about how the Syrian refugees should be persecuted. But Harry Reid in the Senate says he will make sure it dies there, and I'm sure Obama will also veto it. But this now sets up the government shutdown and indeed the default in December, in the middle of December, when this stuff gets added to the defense appropriations bill, and the Republicans say they're going to have not just the war on women with this attack on Planned Parenthood, but also the war on the helpless Syrian refugees, right? These nasty vermin, they're going to threaten, they're going to shut down the whole U.S. government in the name of this. Now, how about Rubio? We need to talk more about Rubio. This is in the Politico. They say we asked Marco Rubio to lay out his ISIL strategy. Here it is. And this is nothing short of World War III. Hold on to your hats. Here's Rubio, Senator Marco Rubio, number 3 in quite a few of the polls on the Republican side. Cutting off oxygen to ISIS, Daesh, also requires defeating Assad in Syria. How do you get that? He's the one fighting them. I would declare no-fly zones to ground Assad's Air Force and coalition-controlled safe zones. He says, I declare no-fly zones to ground Assad's Air Force and coalition-controlled safe zones in the country to stop his military. This is the Erdogan method. These safe zones would stem the flow of refugees and provide a place to train and arm rebel fighters, moderate terrorists. Are we serious? 500 million down the drain, and he wants to keep doing it? And now here's the kicker. I would oppose Russia and Iran in their fight to prolong Assad's brutal regime. Up to what point? Up to World War III? The person is mad. Get him a canvas blazer. Get him a straitjacket. Get him in a padded cell. He's nuts. He's a national menace. Now, more sophisticated, Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton is the only Democrat who wants to have a no-fly zone. And remember her problem? If she's not the biggest hawk on the scene, she's going to be attacked as a weak woman, is what goes through her obfuscated head. So that's her, right? She's relatively inclusive on the refugees, but she wants to escalate. A no-fly zone means a comprehensive U.S. bombing campaign all over Syria. Are you going to bomb the Russian base? If some Syrian planes take refuge on the Russian base, are you going to follow them there and start World War III? You are nuts. This woman is so weak, and she tries to disguise it because she overcompensates. That's what it usually is. Now, interesting, though, in Hillary's speech, the former Secretary of State was unsparing in criticizing U.S. allies Turkey and Saudi Arabia, along with Qatar and other Gulf Arab states, for facilitating extremism and looking the other way. Facilitating extremism is giving material support to terrorism. Our efforts will only succeed if the Arabs and Turks step up in a much bigger way. This is their fight, and they need to act like it. She was toughest on Turkey, a NATO ally. That's a laughingstock. Turkey must finally seal its border with Syria. There it is. Seal the border with Syria. We're for it. Over which most jihadi recruits cross, and stop bombing Kurdish rebel forces in the Islamic State. Now, last Sunday, Kerry was on CNN and said, we're working with the Turks to close that infamous Jarablus to Aleppo corridor. But, of course, with Turkey, it won't happen without a big fight. So we say, fight that big fight. And I think we have reached the end of our final segment. So we thank you for tuning in. Remember, to keep up with all of this day by day, subscribe to the daily briefing of the Tax Wall Street Party. Go to twsp.us. And, of course, at tarpley.net, you can see the whole thing. You can see my Twitter feed. You can see the daily briefing. And indeed get access to some of these books that I cited, like 9/11. See you next week.